So let's call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge. It is Wednesday, April 24th, 2004. Time now is 7:31 p.m. This meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to Borough Council chambers unavailability and is in compliance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and associated regulations. Notice of this remote meeting was published in the Bergen Record, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall, and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last four digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address clearly prior to making a public comment. With that, I'll ask Ms. Steinle to call the roll, please.
All right, thank you. And just so you know, Lisa has arrived. I'll get started with the roll. Mr. Mayor?
Here.
Mr. Caslin?
Here.
Ms. Boland?
Here.
Mr. Merman?
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer is excused tonight. Mr. Cray?
Here.
Mr. Kinigo?
Here.
Councilman Glass?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
And Mr. Bastide is excused tonight.
Okay. Thank you for that. First agenda item this evening is under approval of minutes. We have a draft of the minutes from our meeting of March 27, 2024. It was circulated prior to this evening's meeting for review. Open to the board for comments or questions on the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I have one minor correction.
Mr. Merman?
At the bottom of the first page, it refers to you as opening the meeting when actually I ran the meeting. So it should read Vice Chairman Merman states yada 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 yada. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other comments for the board? Okay, with that one change, I'll look for a motion to approve the meetings as revised. Sorry, the minutes as revised.
We also decline our knowledge about that.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kinigo.
We can just do
You
a
wanna do a
voice
voice?
vote.
Okay.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Any abstain?
I abstain.
I think Ms. Boland, did you?
I was not there, so I abstained.
I will abstain too, because I was not present for that meeting as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda this evening, under memorializations, we have before us revision on the draft ordinance recommendations concerning changes being made to food handlers license terminology. And we're going to take up this evening the revisions that were discussed and received from the board's council for circulation back to the mayor and council. So I'll open it to the board for comments and or questions on the revisions made to the draft ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, I
Mr. Mer-
believe it was more than just the food handler's license. It was to various other aspects of the code.
That was one of them. Correct. Yeah, there were revisions made to various definitions within the code dealing with lot coverage, building coverage, impervious surfaces, and yard amenities, amongst other changes.
Okay.
I have multiple comments. I don't know how you want to approach this, though.
Why don't we dive into it?
Okay. So some of them are repeat, but if you go to section 3, paragraph B, some of these are just minor typos.
Okay.
We need a comma after pergolas. Right, before gazebos.
Okay,
And then I would suggest, as confirmed by the borough engineer prior to approval. Okay, we want them to get approval first. Not prior to installation, right?
well, the problem I think, um,
So first the borough engineer is gonna confirm. Then they're gonna get approval, then they're gonna install it, right?
well, you don't necessarily need approval, like a board approval to get a discount on the permeable pavers if they're under the improved lot coverage number or the lot coverage number now. They'll just need to get a building permit.
I just have to read again. Permeable surfaces shall be counted in lot coverage figure at 50% of surfaces claimed permeable. As confirmed by the, so we need that information right before the borough engineer approves it. Right, we need to know how to count that. Right, the building department's gonna need that. I don't know, maybe there's a better way to clarify it, but I think something needs to happen before they install it. Right, someone's gotta agree on the discount and how it's discounted. Maybe there's better language than just changing that word, but.
Can I comment on that? It would
Sure.
probably come through the zoning review. And as I review it and they're asking for a certain type of permeable pavers, I would refer that to the borough engineer for the specifications of that installation.
Okay,
So I could
so,
change it to prior to approval and installation.
that sounds good.
Or an application for building permits, something to that effect might work as well.
All right, is it okay to keep moving?
Yeah, why don't you keep going?
Okay, so under the definition of impervious surfaces, still 3B, I just wanted to ask you guys. So we've got asphalt, paving, concrete, brick, stone, gravel, macadam. Do we want to add artificial turf or shredded rubber? Because I know we talked about those types of surfaces. Probably not critical, but just to raise the awareness that that would be considered as well. Just a question for you guys.
Well, I'll defer to Ms. Snodley, but the lead in there is including but not limited to those items. So I don't think you could probably add it, but I think something to your example.
Okay.
might
Yeah, it
be
would just be to
considered.
help people, you know.
Get an idea.
Well, it was
Yeah, right.
artificial turf or what was the other example?
Shredded rubber surfaces, you know, like a tennis court, even a track. Not that we're gonna have anyone installing a track, but you know, those types. Sometimes play areas.
Okay, I'll add those two as well, just to try and add some clarity.
Thank you. Okay. In the definitions at the bottom of page 3, 416-4. We list driveways, parking areas, garages under the definition of lot coverage. Walkways, decks, sheds, we add pergolas, gazebos, patios, swimming pools. Later on, when there's a similar description, we mentioned pavilions. I don't know if you want to add that here for consistency. You know, it's kind of
Okay.
similar to, we have pergolas, gazebos. I don't know if we want to add pavilions too.
All right, I will add that.
And then also here you have the same thing with installation. If you want to make that change
Okay.
again, yeah. So my comments repeat, I won't repeat them again, but they appear in multiple places. Where you might want to make those same changes, pavilions and stuff. Okay, more material. I guess, is a question for everyone. This would be under 416-15 maximum lot coverage. Paragraph A. We say, this is about the reserve. A minimum of 5% of the lot coverage in each residential zoning district shall be reserved for yard amenities. I'm not sure what that means. If it's clear to everyone, that's fine, but when we say reserved, so they can't use that, or they couldn't use that for other types of coverage, is that what it means? And they can only use it for yard amenities as defined in this chapter? I just want to be clear exactly on what we mean, that it should be reserved, and that also ties into the table later. You know, I think the table is great, but it has the paragraph reserved, right? And we give the 5%. I'm not sure what reserved, how is that treated with respect to an application? Like they can't go up to 35 unless they use that 5% for these types of things?
Yes, that was the intent.
Okay. So if they don't have any yard amenities,
In
for
their
example, they only go to 30%. So I don't know if there's probably people on this board that are better than me at determining whether that's well defined in here, that you can't use it unless it's used specifically for amenities.
So this question came up and so I agree that I think it warrants a bit more clarity, just so the average, homeowner can understand what this means. And so again, if we go back to the intent, right, it was to reserve 5% of the 35% for what we're calling amenities, which are reserved for primarily the rear yard, which are things like decks, sheds, patios, et cetera. And in 99.9% of cases, people have these things anyway. So necessarily they will occupy some amount of coverage. I get there's a discussion that, whether or not 5% is the right number. We could get into that or not. But in any event, I think we could make it more clear that it's, 5% of the 35% or of the maximum permitted lot coverage.
So Tom,
To clarify.
I think we're kind of saying it can only be used for, right? Is that kind of what it means?
Well, it's meant to, the intent is that there be a specific set aside or reservation. So correct, only you'd have 30% to do everything else, basically. So you'd have 30% to do the dwelling, which there's a maximum building coverage of 25%, which does not change. And then presumably you'd have about 5% left over to do your driveway and walkway. And depending on the material of the driveway and walkway, there could be a discount credit there also if it's with a certain type of paver or stone. I mean, that's the intent. So, I agree that the wording could be refined a bit. It doesn't, I know that there's a concern of, does this take anything away from anyone? Again, the thresholds are not changing. There's still the same 25% building coverage. There's still the same 35%. We're calling it lot coverage now. We're also giving more flexibility with certain paving materials and decks where you can actually get more coverage. So in some cases, you'll be able to do more than you could today. We're just saying that in cases where, well, the issue was, in the cases of a new build or even certain additions, that there was no room left over for these things. And the board's experience was that variance application after variance application, that this was an issue that needed to be addressed because people were taking advantage of it, frankly.
Yeah, I'm good with all that. I wasn't trying to reinvent that. I just want to make sure that the language is clear and it's clear what we mean by reserve. That's all.
Point well taken. I think we could tighten it up. I think Marina and I, and Steve, I think collectively we can tighten that up. And again, the way the process will work is assuming this gets recommended to the council can review it, chew on it. It presumably would get introduced, come back to this board for master plan consistency review, and then go back to the council for adoption. So there's still a few more, checks and balances on this. And not to get into the weeds, but on this issue, there's a question of, I know we landed on 5%, but I just thought it might be helpful to put some numbers to that. What does that actually mean? So I did a quick table and in consideration of this new 50% discount we're calling. And that means that if previously you were entitled to 100% a 100 square foot patio, you can now do a 150 square foot patio up to a certain limit. So I'll share my screen for a moment, if you can bear with me, just so the board is comfortable with, the allocations that we're talking about. And, the options may be to simply confirm that 5% is okay or consider something different. So can you all see my little quick chart that I made here?
Yes.
So on the very left-hand column, it includes the typical lot sizes in River Edge, which are 5,000 to 10,000 generally. Of course, there are anomalies, some that are larger and some somewhere in between. So the new 5% set aside gives you those numbers of what those reserve numbers mean. So for the typical 5,000 square foot lot, that means you have to save 250 square feet for the backyard, which is not out of whack. And if you add the new 50% bonus, for certain paid materials, you actually end up getting 375 square feet in the backyard. If you were to adjust that to 3%, for instance, you have those same respective numbers in the column. So I'm not suggesting a change, but I know there were questions in the board, and I've heard others just, what do these numbers actually mean? I thought that this would help the board, confirm that, this number makes sense, to have some, data, as it were, behind the decision, or recommendation rather, or it's a recommendation at this point. So does this make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, I
At
just,
least, does it
Yes.
warrant further? Okay, so I guess the question would be, if you're comfortable with the 5%, we keep it that way. And again, these would be the applicable numbers. So again, nothing is being taken away in terms of the ability of somebody to improve their lot. In most cases, they'll be able to do a bit more because of the new coverage discount for patios and decks and the like. This just merely says that you have to save some space in the back to do these things.
And a person could still come to us asking for a variance after they have these things too. So, it's not necessarily limiting people to
Right.
being able to do things. It's just forcing their hand, and I think more importantly, forcing the hand of the builders to set this aside. I don't think we should reduce it, because I think we need to encourage people to have these spaces, because it's what they want. It's what they're going to need. And we have too many people buying houses that not realizing that they don't have the space. So I'm
Hey,
all-
Tom, I don't agree with your math, the
Oh.
parentheticals.
Okay.
So if you take the first example, you had 5,000 square feet, 5%, 250, and then you had in parentheses 375.
Right.
It wouldn't really work that way.
Okay.
Because 375 times 0.5, right, isn't 250, it's 187.5. So you have to back into the parenthetical.
Well, I was doing, if the 5% would get you to 250, and you could add an additional 50% on top.
Right, so if it was permeable
Right.
and we were giving a 50% discount, it would be 500 square feet, right? And then you'd multiply that 500 by 0.5, right? And it would be equivalent to 250 feet of lot coverage. So you take the 250 and divide by 0.5 instead of banging it up by 50%.
Right, the
Right, we're
question,
saying, look, if you install 500 square feet, we're gonna
Yeah.
discount that 50%. So we're only gonna count it as 250.
Okay, so you see it as subtractive and not additive?
Well, it's just the math. We're saying, look,
Okay.
it's as if it's 50% permeable, right? So you put in 500 square, right? So you put in 500 square feet, it's like you only put in 250.
right, the language in the document.
I see what you're
says
saying. Yeah.
You get a discount.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, I stand. I
Yeah,
suppose.
I
No, it's
agree with
good,
that.
it's
I gave
good.
it flat math too, Tom. It's a discount, so.
I honestly, I did it very
You're the
quickly
other
a
way.
few minutes ago.
So-
So
So what would those numbers be then? Would they be higher than what he just shared on the screen, or would they be lower?
um,
Higher.
It would double.
Higher.
So,
The
yeah, if it-
parentheticals would be higher.
So you're just you're doubling what you could have before. So if I
Right.
was allowed 100 feet, I can now do 200 feet.
Instead of calling it a discount, Tom, we'd better off calling it a bonus.
Yeah, I think a bonus makes sense.
Just, I think if people, bonus would be additive, I think, in people's mind. Discount, you're kind of taking away. I'm just thinking.
Yeah,
just-
well, it is intended as sort of, a bonus, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the appropriate way to look at it.
Okay.
I don't think the math would work out. I think that it has to be called a discount, and then the math would be N times 0.5 equals whatever the amount was, and then you would divide by 0.5 on both sides, and that's where you would get.
Yeah, I mean, people are gonna tell us what square footage they want to put in. And then we're gonna say, well, it's 50% permeable, so we're only gonna count it as 250. Right? It's like a discount.
Do we want to put the math in the ordinance?
Well,
An example.
actually, Tom, there is an example, the math is right in the ordinance. There's an example, a parenthetical example in the ordinance, and the math is right.
Where is that?
So under the definition of lot coverage for decks, we had previously agreed to have a discount of 75% in the lot coverage calculation if the deck has open joints and no impervious surface below. So
Right.
if you had a 100 square foot deck with open joints, no impervious below, then the lot coverage calculation for that deck would be 25 square feet. So
Exactly.
even though it's physically 100 square feet, it would only count towards 25 square feet of
Yeah.
lot coverage.
Correct, correct.
And I think that's the right way to do it because you're starting with what's going to be there and discounting off it.
Yeah, so the example in the ordinance, in the parenthetical is correct.
And it's important that we don't give, important that we let them present what they have and then explain to them what the discount is, instead of encouraging, an amount that might be problematic because we don't want them to have to come to us if they work within the, because it's expensive and time consuming to come to us. So it's much better that this is, as long as Steve is comfortable with the math, I'm comfortable with the ordinance the way it's written.
I am.
Just to clarify then, so on the deck, you're dividing by 0.75, and that gets you the number. Is that the right
You're
math?
you're multiplying your proposed area by 0.75.
Right.
And
Okay.
that's what's considered the lot coverage.
Multiplied by 0.75. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman?
I have a few others. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
To burden everyone. I don't know if you guys agree with me on this, but section 13, paragraph A starts with the term accessory building or structure is not intended to include. And then A3 is air conditioning units, HVAC equipment, solar panels, and so on. And then in B, we say the term accessory building or structure shall include air conditioning units, HV, so that just confused me.
The difference is in A, it's for residential buildings. And then for B, it's for non-residential buildings.
Okay, so that was our intent?
Well,
Yes.
I do think at the end of the day, we still need setbacks for ACs and generators in residential zones. We've had them, they've been 4 feet. So, whether or not we call them accessory buildings or structures, I would recommend a few things. One, that they not be in the front yard, and two, that there be a minimum side and rear yard setback. And I guess there's two ways to achieve that. Either we remove it from the exemptions, or we just give it a separate provision that clarifies it. Feel free to disagree, but it seems to be fairly commonplace in codes.
Okay, I don't see where it says residential and non-residential in A and B though.
Under A3, the last
It's the last part of the sentence.
part of the sentence.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay.
Yeah, I think Mr. Barrett's suggestion on the residential, have some minimum, have a nominal setback kind of makes sense. Is there any objection to that from the board? Okay.
With the generators, I think you would want to put a maximum distance from the house also.
There's a generally accepted, I guess, depending on the layout of the house and the property, is there a general configuration for where they're generally located? Steve?
Well, no, not necessarily. There's been situations where the generators have been put back quite away from the structure, so they didn't have to hear it, or by a detached garage or something like that. But then it affects the neighbors when it goes into your startup modes.
I think that can be covered in our next round of zoning ordinance updates. Not necessarily in this one.
Sounds good.
Councilman?
I have one more, guys. And this is for discussion in section 13, again, still in the same section, paragraph C. We're allowing garages and flagpoles to be up to 15 feet high. I don't know if we wanted to add gazebos, pergolas, pavilions too. I don't know why any one of those would be more offensive than a garage at 15 feet. Just a thought.
Well, a garage is more of a structure for storage with cars and possibly a small attic space. Having it 15 feet high will eliminate the possible putting a second floor. As far as the sheds, aren't as large as a garage. I think they would look narrow and tall. And pergolas, gazebos, things like that. Average size is 10 feet, as long as you had head clearance coming into the structure.
Excellent, thank you. One last thing, on the table, I think the table's great. By the way, I think all the work done on this is terrific. Single family cluster, under lot coverage. So we have building coverage 30%, and then we have lot coverage 10%. That didn't make sense to me that the lot coverage is lower than the building coverage. Was that a typo?
I think I took that from the prior ordinance. I can check though. Let me see.
Yeah, so right now the building coverage is 30% and the lot coverage is 10%. I would have thought the lot coverage has to be a higher number than the building coverage.
That is in the current table.
Steve, does that need to be fixed?
Clusters, you're talking about townhouses, things of that nature, and they usually go into a more building coverage than lot coverage. You have smaller backyards, smaller front yards, so possibly that's where that smaller number came up.
Does it make sense that the lot coverage would be smaller than the building coverage?
It wouldn't make sense because you're including building coverage within the lot coverage.
Right.
Tom and Steve, can you guys fix that before it goes to the council?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll take a look. I think there's anyway, yes, to answer your question.
Councilman?
Thank you very much for entertaining my comments.
Okay. Anyone else on the board comments? Okay. So at this point, would there be consensus to let Tom and Steve and Marina do whatever revisions they need to make to this and have one more look at this, or is the board comfortable enough that, assuming those changes are made, taking a vote now and referring this on to the mayor and council?
And
Mr.
just to add to that, the board will see this ordinance again, just for the master plan consistency review.
Mr. Chairman,
Nigo,
I think it's time with these changes that we move it on to the council. We've talked about it for a while, and I think it's time that they look at it. We'll get another shot at fixing anything else that we feel may need to be addressed. Thanks.
okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I would agree.
Also
Mr.
agree.
Okay. All right, that being said, with that consensus, I'll look for a motion then to make that recommendation.
So moved.
Motion's
Okay, thank you. I have Mr. Kniga on a first and Mr. Merman on a second.
We can just do all in favor?
Want to do a voiceover? Okay. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Okay, our next agenda item this evening is under completeness review. The first item is Leon and Jennifer Chen, 135 Kensington Road. This is block 8414, lot 2. A proposed rear one-story addition to include a deck and stairs, and looking for relief on a rear yard setback. I believe the applicant is here. Good evening as well, in case we have questions. Ms. Steinley?
Yes, thank you. Prior to the meeting, I reviewed the proofs submitted by the applicant and found them to be sufficient for the board to hear the application tonight.
Okay, Mr. Depkin. Any comments on completeness?
Yes, when I did the zoning review, it was a non-compliance letter that was sent. And we can discuss that during the application.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Costa, good evening.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. You can, my recommendation would be take it to the public session.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions from the board on the application as far as completeness? Okay, there being none, I'll look for a motion on the deem the application complete.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Merman.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the motion.
Mr. Gibbons and Mr. Merman.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes,
Mr. Merman,
Yes,
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Kanigo,
Yes.
Councilman Glass,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Our second application this evening, and my apologies if I do not pronounce this correctly. The applicant is Yumijan Kairulov. Property is 606 Kinderkamak Road, block 617, lot 14. This is a food handler's license on a change of tenant. I believe the applicant is here as well as his counsel this evening, so we have them available. Ms. Steinley, turn to you.
Yes, thank you. Prior to this meeting, I reviewed the proof submitted by the applicant's attorney and found them to be sufficient for the board to hear the application tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Depkin?
Yes, I did the zoning review for the application and deemed it complete in regards to zoning to be presented to the board.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Costa? Any comments on the completeness aspects?
I concur. My recommendation, send it to the public meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions, comments from the board on completeness? Okay, there being none, I'll look for a motion to deem this application complete.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kanigo. Is there a second?
I'll
Second?
second it, Mr. Chair.
I think I may have gotten Mr. Merman a hair ahead of Ms. Boland, so.
I'll yield.
Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes,
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Kenigo,
Yes,
Councilman Glass,
Yes.
and Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're gonna move now under new business. Our first application is Leon and Jennifer Chen. Property is 135 Kensington Road, block 814, lot 2. Application is seeking a rear yard setback relief in connection with a one-story addition to the existing dwelling. I believe I see Mr. Chen, good evening.
Hi, how you doing? My
Doing
wife's
well.
actually with me, but our baby just had a little accident, so she's taking care of it.
All good. Do you have anybody else with you this evening? Do you have an architect with you?
That's me, Kevin Spink.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay, before we get started, I'll ask Ms. Steinle to take care of the formalities.
All right, if you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and we'll start with Mr. Chen. If you just state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record.
Sure. My name is Leon Chen, Leon. Last name is Chen. My address is 135 Kensington Road in River Edge.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Spink, if you state your name, spell your last name, provide your address, and give the board some background on your qualifications and licensure.
Certainly. My name is Kevin Spink, SP as in Peter, INK, from the firm of Kanzani Associate Architects. We are located at 21-00 Route 208 South in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, Suite 260. I am a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey in good standing since 2009. I have worked at the firm of Kanzani Associate Architects since 1994, so 30 years this October. I have
Thank you.
presented in front of this board as well as hundreds of others up and down the East Coast.
Okay. Any questions from the board on Mr. Spink's qualifications? Okay. Thank you. And I think Mr. Chen, is your wife going to give testimony as well? Or should we swear her into?
No, just me.
Just you. Okay. All right. So why don't we get started then, Mr. Chen, if you would, for the board's benefit, if you could describe what it is that you're looking to do with your property and the relief you're looking for from the board this evening.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your time. We've been here for about 4 years. We moved here July 2020, the height of pandemic, and we really love this town, and we've grown to love our neighbors, and we made friends here. So, we like where we are, and we like our house, but we now have a 4-year-old and also a 4-month-old. I don't know if you can see her, but so we just had a new baby in December. And even though we have enough bedrooms, but we're just kind of really growing out of the living space. Our house, if you come into the front entrance, it goes directly into dining area or the living room area. And the one living room area is basically one living area where all of us, and at times my in-laws come visit and stay with us. Everybody's just basically on top of each other in the living room. Now, if you come to other entrance, it goes right into the dining room, the kitchen where we are right now. So really, we have no space for shoes, jackets, and with a 4-year-old, it's just kind of, things are everywhere. We don't want to move because we like this town. And so we do want to kind of expand a little bit where our deck is that we don't actually get to use as much as we, thought we were going to. So we figured that we will make it into a little additional play area, living space, and just give each other a little bit more space overall. So that's kind of what we're looking to do with this proposal.
Okay, thanks for that. Maybe I'll just, Mr. Spink, if you wouldn't mind, if you could get in some of the technical aspects of the application.
Certainly. Would you like me to share the screen to present it, or?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Does everybody see it? See this now?
We've got a plan up. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, these are the drawings that we submitted consisted of A1 and A2, which are the elevations and the floor plans. Our property is located in the R1 zone. We are a corner lot, and we are deficient in total square footage. The lot area is supposed to be required 7,500. We are 7,163 square feet, so we are short on the overall size. The fact that it is a corner lot as well has created some of or all of the conditions that we have as 2 front yards. As you can see on our site plan, you have the 2 front yards at 30 feet. You have the 25-foot rear yard and the 7.5-foot side yard. Ultimately, that creates a really a non-buildable area on this piece of property to put anything. So what we are looking to do is there is an existing deck on the rear of the house that is in this location. We are looking to basically square off the rear of the house with a 1-story addition, removing the deck, and creating a family room and a mudroom that would allow for access from the side of the house. As Mr. Chen had commented, currently when you walk into the front of the house, you're walking pretty much directly at a staircase that goes directly to the dining room on the the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, you're going right into the family room or their current living room. So there really is not any place to take shoes off or hang up coats. You're right into the space. So we were looking to create, go to the second floor, we were looking to create a mudroom area that as you come in, we'd have some place to actually remove clothes, remove your shoes, be able to hang them up and put them away without encroaching on the front of the current house. We're also looking to add as I said, a family room, which would give them additional square footage area for the family to meet and join together without having all of the kids' toys in that area, because they tend to, I have 2 children of my own. I know it fills up the area very quickly. Ultimately, the variance requests that we're asking for is due to the fact that this addition will be built both or completely into what would be the rear yard setback. We are not increasing our rear yard any bigger than what it currently is. It currently is 9.5 feet to the back of the house. We are looking at the corner where the 2-story portion of the house currently is 14.25. That is our closest encroachment that we are looking to do, and then it gets back to a 20.54. Again, this is a 1-story addition. The neighbors' houses, both left and right, if you will, on the property are the garage sides of the house. On the northern portion, it is a 1-story garage, so there is no house extending over it. So this does not really impact or impede onto the neighbor's house. The opposite side, there is a 2-story portion of the house, but it is garage. So again, as a 1-story, our windows are not looking directly into somebody else's house, and they are not looking directly into ours. We felt this was a de minimis in nature overall, and because of the hardships of the property shape, the location of the house, and the undersize of the lot, we felt that this would be an acceptable application. I would like to review some of the Costa Engineering comments, if I may. Specifically, number 4 in his general comments, the schematic site plan references surveys by Dunn Surveying and Mapping dated 1/19. The survey submitted to the application was dated February 24th, 2020. The reason for this discrepancy is that our firm actually did the original renovations to this house, and we had the site plan from that 2019, and we had reused it. The only differences between the 2019 and the 2020 site plans are there is a second air conditioning unit at the back. So there are 2 air conditioning units in lieu of one, instead of 1. And on the front of the house, instead of the walkway extending directly out to the front of the house, it is just a ball shape, and it extends up to the driveway. Those are essentially the only changes that were on it. Continuing on to the comments from the engineering comments regarding stormwater management and drainage. We just received this copy, so we have not been able to update our drawings or calculations, but we will concede that we will put in a drainage system. And they were asking where the location should be to pick up for this roof. The best location for it would be right in this location right here to the northern portion of the driveway due to the topography. And that is one of the additional questions. Topography is that the property is high in the southern corner, and it slopes downwards to the northern corner at this bite here. So by placing it in this location here, we are catching it at the low point as it's sloping down. It is in front of the neighbor's house and neighbor's garage, so at no point would we be initiating any additional water or runoff onto the neighbor's house through this detention system. And we will agree to do whatever calculations that are required. If this application was approved, it would be based on that condition that, yes, we will provide calculations for a drainage system that will capture the roof leaders for this total addition. Everything else, I believe, is just generic in nature. There is no additional landscaping that would be happening. There's no additional traffic concerns. I believe that would be everything. And I feel that this is, as I said, minimus in nature, and that it does not affect the neighbors in any way. It is not even visible from the front yards as you're driving by. The overall finishes that we will be putting onto this will match the current house, so it will be a white clapboard siding. And I feel that the board should hopefully look favorably upon this application.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Spink. If you could stop sharing your screen for the moment, that'd be
Absolutely.
great. Thanks. All right, let me open it to the board for questions. Let me start with Mr. Craig.
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to make sure I understood the addition is going to be built on the footprint of the existing patio that's being removed. It's not expanding it in any way. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. The current deck is probably about 5 feet short of the corner of the house. We are squaring off the back corner of the house.
Got it. Okay. So it is and that's where you're going down to the 9.5 feet then. Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes, the existing deck, if I'm not mistaken, is approximately 192 square feet. And our addition is about 272 square feet when you actually take the total square footages.
Okay. And what was the existing patio construction? What was that made of?
It was an elevated deck.
Okay. Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Craig. Ms. Boland?
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Glass?
I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kanigo?
Seems reasonable to me. No comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gibbons?
I am good. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Merman?
I'm also good. I have no questions.
Okay. No questions from me either. At this point, I believe we will, I'd like a motion to open the meeting to the public for this application alone.
So moved. Second.
I'll second.
Okay,
Whatever.
I think I got a first for Mr. Gibbons and a second for Mr. Kanigo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. At this time, we're now open to the public for comments on this application alone. If there's anyone in the audience or on Zoom would like to be heard on this application, please raise your hand. Ms. Donnelly, do we have anybody?
We do have some attendees, but nobody's raising their hand.
Okay. Give it
You
a
can
couple
dial *9 or raise your hand on Zoom. Doesn't look like anybody.
All right. That being the case, I'll look for a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. There's a second.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Boland. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? All right, we're now closed to the public for comment on this application. Any further questions, comments from the board or our professionals? Okay. There being none, I will look to the board for a motion on the application, please.
May I offer a motion, Mr. Chair?
Please do so, Mr. Merman.
Regarding Leon and Jennifer Cohen, 135 Kensington Road, block 814, lot 2, regarding the proposed rear addition, which replace rear addition and stair. there's one variance required, and that's a rear yard setback variance. The existing non-conforming variance is 9.5 feet. Code requires 25 foot. The proposed setback still results in a rear yard variance of 14.1 feet, which in essence improves an existing non-conforming condition. I make a motion that the planning board grant approval, and that the approval include the applicant incorporating Mr. Costa's stormwater management comments. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Merman. Is there a second to the motion?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Bowen.
Mhm.
Ms. Steinley, when you're ready.
I just wanted to clarify that the rear yard setback, there's two numbers. One is 9.5 feet and the other is 14.21 feet. Both of those are going to be existing, correct?
Okay, yes, they
Mr.
are.
Spink? Okay. Mr. Spink is nodding.
That is correct, yes. The 9.5 is to the two-story pre-existing building. The 14.21 is to the other corner of the two-story pre-existing, and that is where our one-story will start.
Okay. All right, just so we're clear in the motion. All right, we have a motion and second, and I'll take the vote. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Kanigo,
Yes.
Councilman Glass,
Yes.
and Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Great.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
very
Thank you.
much.
Good luck.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All the
Good luck. Good night.
best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, moving along on our agenda this evening under new business, we move now to applicant is Yumijan Kairulov. Property 606 Kinderkmack Road, block 617, lot 14. This is in connection with a change of tenant and an application for a food handler's license. I believe we have both the applicant and the applicant's counsel with us this evening. Mr. Barrett, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, this is an application necessitated by the ordinance, which states if you need a food handler's license, then you need to get site plan approval. The premises were formerly used most previously by the Monsoon Restaurant. And to my knowledge, it's been a restaurant for at least 62 years. When I moved into River Edge in 1962, it was the Madison, and then it had various improvements over the years, going from a neighborhood gin mill to a restaurant, then a Chinese restaurant, and then the Indian restaurant. And now Mr. Karulov would like to open and I might not pronounce this correctly, Uzbekistan restaurant. Yeah. There are no changes proposed to the site whatsoever. Everything is staying the same number of seats. There's no outside construction. I stand correct. There is one change, and that's to the sign. The Monsoon sign would be replaced with the sign, a copy of which was submitted to the board. It's going to be mounted in the same place. The mounting irons, or whatever they're called, are located on the roof. They're still there. The sign itself, the Monsoon restaurant sign, was removed. And if the board were to grant approval, the new sign would go up. It's black and white. As I say, there are no changes proposed, but Mr. Costa did have a couple of questions, which I will ask my client just for confirmation. And the first question that he had was whether or not—
I'm sorry, Tom. I'll just have
you
to swear you.
in. Sorry.
So if you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Yes, I
Mr. Cruz.
Yes, and just state your name and spell your last name for the record and provide your address.
My first name Umid John, last name Khairuloyev. Address 369 Safari Drive, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay, Mr. Barrett?
Thank you. So, Mr. Krulov, the borough engineer had inquired whether or not the existing aspects of the restaurant are in acceptable condition and whether or not you proposed any interior renovations.
No, everything the same, nothing changed.
Okay. Also, Mr. Costa had a comment whether or not whether there's a necessity to be compliant with the latest ADA accessible designs. And I think we've had this discussion before, since there are no improvements proposed, that the premises do not have to be brought up to the latest standards. Ms. Krulov, what do you intend to be the hours of operation of the restaurant?
So I am planning from 11 a.m. till 11 p.m.
And that would be 7 days a week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, there was a question as to whether or not you plan on any improvements to the existing patio, the outdoor patio.
No, it's fine. I don't want to change anything. I like it. It's very nice. Everything good.
That's going to stay the same.
Yes, sir. Everything the same.
And there was a question too from Mr. Costa, whether or not you were proposing any additional landscaping.
No.
Just you're going to keep the existing landscaping.
Yes, how it is. Everything, I like it. Everything fine.
And the existing lighting for the patio are the lights that are mounted in the wall surrounding the patio. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you plan on any additional lighting?
No, everything fine. Everything, I like it. New. Nothing to change because everything fine.
Okay. There was a comment that the parking spaces that are on the site should be relined. Are you in agreement with doing that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, how do you plan on having your products delivered to the restaurant?
Because I have already one restaurant in Marlboro Township. This is my second restaurant. So hopefully I do well. First one, second one also. I know what I'm doing.
So how are you going to get your supplies? How will they be delivered?
So supplies, the delivery morning time, maybe every Wednesday.
And do you know what kind of a truck they use to make those deliveries?
But I use everything halal, so it's come small cars, you know. They bring me everything fresh.
Okay, so in a van?
Yeah, it's like minivan.
Okay, so no tractor trailers.
No.
Okay, and what about the garbage pickup? What arrangements have you made for that?
Oh, I already spoke with the guys. Every week twice they come to pick up the garbage. I have spot on the backside already, 20 yards. So every Wednesday and Saturday they come to change.
So that there's a dumpster in the back right now?
Yeah. Everything like before.
So again, the company that is going to be removing the garbage is familiar with the site, and they don't feel they'll have any problem accessing that dumpster?
Because I spoke with them, they told me before they make it service for the restaurant Indian. So I keep it how it was, a week twice. They come to pick up everything.
Okay, so it's actually the same company as the prior restaurant?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, no changes.
No
Okay.
change.
I do not have any additional questions at this time.
Thank you.
Questions from our professional. Let me start with Mr. Depkin.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, they met all the requirements. The fact that there's no changes interior or exterior just seems to be a turnkey operation. The only issue that I have is signage. I didn't see the signage application. I did see the proposed sign. There's no measurements on those, and I see the location. They will need to obtain a building permit for the installation of the sign. So just so they're aware of that, that they can come in and, submit a permit for the signage. Will the signage be lit? And if so, how?
Is there going to be any lighting for the sign? Is there going to be a light shining on the sign, Mr. Cruz?
No, there is
No lighting?
no sign. No, there is regular sign. There is white
Okay.
and black.
He can submit that with the building permit, so that's fine.
And just so the board is aware, I mean, it was submitted, but it is a large sign, relatively speaking. It's 40 square feet. It's 10 by 40.
Oh.
And it's the same size as as the monsoon sign that was there.
So Tom, to be clear, the monsoon sign is 40 square feet currently? I'm
No,
not
it's
sure.
not. It's
Okay.
been taken down.
Well, okay, so the previously approved sign was 40 square feet? I think that warrants confirmation because we allow a maximum of I believe it's 20 square feet, so.
Correct.
Either you'd be held to the 20 square feet or whatever was previously approved, so. I
Right.
mean, we could accept those conditions without a specific number if you want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, as you know, it's somewhat difficult to find out what was and what wasn't approved. Even, I mean, I was able to get a copy of the monsoon resolution when they put in the patio.
Yeah,
But any of the other documents were not available. So,
Oh.
I mean, I can try and ascertain. Unfortunately, the monsoon's attorney is now retired. That's Sam Soresti.
Right.
So can't get his records. In any event, I'm sure we can, get some information somewhere. I mean, if you just look at the.
I would just be hesitant to rubber stamp the 40 square feet without confirming. So if in fact the previous sign was larger and we can, the building department can come to an agreement with that, I think that's, I don't want to speak for them, but that seems reasonable, or 20 square feet, just to say 40 square feet, I think would be.
I understand. I think that
Get it, right.
and again, I don't even know what you call the things on the roof that hold the sign. You call them stanchions or? There's 3 of them on there, and there's a picture that was submitted with the application showing those. On the roof.
Former monsoon sign can be observed on Google Street View, I believe. So that gives an indication, an estimate of what was there, whatever that may be.
Right. That's fine. That's all we want to do is have what they have.
If that's the case, then yeah, I would need something from the board stating what the size of the signage would be on a approval.
So the board could decide tonight that they're okay with the 40 square foot sign.
Yeah.
That's up to the board.
Okay.
I just have a comment about that. Looking on Google Earth, the monsoon sign might be 40 square feet, but the lettering, it's not a square 4 by 10. And if what's being proposed it would appear to be much larger. The monsoon sign is just the lettering without the frame. So we'd want to make sure it's not a solid versus just the lettering.
Does anyone have the ability to share the sign so we could, just take a quick look and put this to bed?
You mean the one I submitted?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either. I assume it's via email.
I only have the paper copy, but
Let's see, that's Sharon.
just a big.
I think I can share my screen.
All right, let's do that. That shows what's existing.
Well, not existing, what was there?
Well, what was there, right? And Darryl, do you have the exhibit that was submitted for the proposed?
I don't think I have the exhibit now.
Okay. Does anyone, can we,
Hold on. Let me see.
scanning my email?
Is it in the documents that are listed on the website?
Yeah, but I believe it would be either part of the application packet or separate.
Yes, it was.
Let's see.
Well, Marina, do you want to try to hold it up again if that's the best we've got? I mean, that's kind of where we're at.
So it's hard to focus with this, but
Right.
will all the black square rectangle be the full sign, or is it individual letters?
No, it's a solid sign. The letters are on the sign.
And then that rectangle would be hung up on the brackets.
Brackets, thank you, yes. The word I was looking for.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Merman,
that sign was included in the packet. And it had a cover sheet that said it was 40 square feet.
correct.
And the picture is as Ms. Steinley showed. So basically, in my packet, I had a submittal of a sign by the applicant with size, total square footage, and a layout.
And I think we also had pictures of the bracket that would be supporting the new sign that had supported the previous sign from Monsoon.
That is correct.
And they remain in place.
The brackets
They
are
are.
still there.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so why don't we come,
Oh, Mr. Barrett, is it safe to say that the applicant is proposing a 40 square foot sign of the layout shown?
Yes. That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
okay, and is that part of our application? That's part of our application tonight for review? Is the sign?
Yes. Yes, it was all submitted.
Okay. Just making sure we have that covered. Okay. Mr. Deputy, anything further from you before we move on?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gibbon, Mr. Costa, excuse me. Just coming to you.
Sorry about that. The only thing, and maybe Mr. Merman can refresh my memory also. I think the previous application, they were supposed to do some streetscape, but they never did. And then I think ultimately they either moved the location or went out of business there. So I'm not sure if that's still probably needs to be done under this.
I don't think there's anything in the resolution, Mr. Costa. Let me just find it here. I could be mistaken. That's been known to happen. No, you are correct. Good memory. The applicant was to update this streetscape similar to Sanducci's. Number
Correct.
14 of the resolution of 2018.
That is correct, but that was never, again, that was never done, and then I think ultimately the restaurant closed. I'm not sure if this gentleman's purchasing the property or is the tenant.
No, he's the tenant. The landlord is on the Zoom. That's Mr. Aiden. So I don't know if he was familiar with what occurred back in 2018 or not.
I could swear you in, Mr. Aiden, if you please
Sure.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record.
Gabriel Aiden, last name Aydin, 4 Beacon Way, Jersey City, 07304.
Thank you. And
Mr.
you
Aiden.
are a representative of the landlord?
Yeah, managing partner for Hannah Realty.
Oh, okay, good.
So sorry, Mr. Costa, can you repeat your question?
No, so
So-
the previous application, there was a requirement to do the streetscape, which never got accomplished. And then ultimately, I think, I was under the impression they were the owners. I didn't realize maybe you guys bought it after the fact. I don't know. But that was never done. So it's up to the board whether or not they want to waive that previous requirement. Which, if I was a betting man, I would say they wouldn't. But again, I mean, you can certainly request that, but I'm not sure how we get to that point. Based on the previous, they built the outside patio, and I'm pretty sure, and Tom, I don't have that resolution, I apologize, but I think you read it, and that was a requirement back in 18 or 19.
18, yeah. So what would, maybe if you could explain to us, Mr. Costa, what would be required?
Basically sidewalk, brick pavers. I'm not sure if it says verbatim the Sanducci's property. I think Tony and Lisa, what's that?
It's similar to Sanducci's.
Right, I'm pretty sure they have a light there also, if I'm not mistaken. The good news is they no longer make those lights, which is a very large cost, but they don't actually manufacture them anymore. But again, it's strictly up to the board.
So if I understand it, and just so Mr. Aiden understands it, you're suggesting that the sidewalks in the front of the property be changed over to the brick pavers or whatever they're called?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
I mean, it looks like it would be pavers between the existing sidewalk and curb potentially, and maybe replacement of a few slabs if they're broken, which you might have to do anyway. With or without the light post. Is that accurate, Mr. Costa? I think one of the street trees is dead also, so that might be worth.
Be another, right, could be trees, again, I'd have to recircle back to it, but I think you get the gist what's out there.
Right, so it's about it's about 60 feet because the southerly driveway alongside the beauty salon is almost 33 feet, and then the northerly driveway appears to be almost 7 feet. So about 40 feet of the 100-foot frontage is driveways. So
Okay.
we'd only be talking about the sidewalk area. Is that right, Mr. Costa?
That I'm not sure of. If it goes back to what Sanducci's is, and I don't have the Google Maps or Google Earth in front of me, they might have changed their actual aprons for their driveways also. So whatever that mimic is, again, but certainly you could come in with a sketch, show us what you want to do, and if the board wants to change that, you could do that. Otherwise, I think it's got to go back to what the condition was in the previous resolution, or get that waived.
Well, whatever's installed there ultimately should be consistent with what exists today, correct? It's up the street.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Well, I think that was the intention.
Right.
I'm looking at Sanducci's on the map right now, and it's from September of 2021. And as mentioned, I think the grass area between the sidewalk and the street is now pavers. As of this picture, the The driveway is just the old sidewalk type.
I'm gonna share the screen. Oh, you guys want to see?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. So I think we're just talking pavers for, 3 feet by 60 feet, I guess, something like that.
Oh, okay. So the sidewalk would remain unless the slabs need to be replaced, and it's just that minimal area between the curb and the walkway that we're talking about.
Well, actually, it would be the sidewalk pattern is probably not the same as this. So it's probably the sidewalk and the pavers, and then possibly street trees if they can fit there. And again, that's what was constructed, many years ago.
So, all right, so help me here. So are we saying that you want the sidewalks replaced with pavers? They'd be the only ones with pavers as
No,
a
no.
sidewalk.
The sidewalk would have to match the streetscape, which this doesn't. And then where the grass is, that would become the brick pavers. You have trees there, you would have to weld the trees with the Belgian block curbing.
Right, but I'm still confused if you could, maybe I'm being dull or something, but what are we doing with the sidewalk? What's the proposal?
The sidewalk would have to match the sidewalk that's required under the streetscape ordinance, which is a different pattern than what is existing there. It's different type of concrete pattern with a curb.
The curb, the strip of brick pavers, as you see there, with wells for new trees, and then a
Right.
walkway for, concrete walkway.
Right.
And so why is this required for this location with the existing buildings next to it don't have that pavers as well?
Well, it was required when we had an application before us for Monsoon. That was a condition of approval that they make these improvements back in 2018. Those improvements were never made. So what should have happened was what you see here should have been done to the front of your property.
It never was.
And it wasn't. Those conditions were never satisfied.
Got it.
So it's as between you and the tenant, you need to come up with who, if the board takes action on this and does continue to have that as a requirement as a condition of approval tonight, as between you and the tenant, you'll have to determine who's going to be responsible for making those improvements.
Sure, yeah, I mean, we could talk offline on that.
Okay. Why don't let's continue.
I have a question there, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Merman?
Okay, Mr. Costa, we're
Yes.
putting in a handicap spot in the front. Would not that walkway have to be replaced with a heavier slab because of the wheel loading?
Well, the requirement for ADA is it cannot be more than 2% in each direction. So if the grading there doesn't work, they're gonna have to modify that parking area. If it's steeper than 2% in any direction, it won't meet the new requirements.
Well, the space is already there, and it's marked as a handicapped space.
Right, if you don't touch it, that we determined that previously, no
Right.
harm, no foul, but if you touch it, then you have to.
Right. So we don't want to touch it.
Okay, so
Okay.
you're not touching. So that wouldn't come into effect.
Okay, question
Just by
answered.
replacing the sidewalk in the front, not touching the parking, no problem. So that's the only, again, everything else stays the same. Mr. Barrett, I believe, sent or Marina sent this afternoon, the agreement between the adjacent property owner and the parking spaces. I don't know I'm sure there's some board members left that remember, it was almost like the Hatfields and McCoys on that with the shared parking arrangement. That was worked out, and according to what you sent, Mr. Barrett, you can put on the record, that's still in force.
Right, and I believe Mr. Gorski and his attorney they're supposed to be present at the hearing to confirm that, but to also make a request, which I'll say for them, that it's limited to the spaces that are mentioned in the agreement, the 12 parking spaces. It doesn't, the agreement to share parking does not extend beyond the northerly property, this northerly property line, if it was extended through what is Mr. Gorski's property. So on our plan, they're listed as spaces 9 through or something. Yeah, spaces 9 through 19.
19.
And essentially, as I said,
Basically, that's in full force and effect.
That's correct.
Everything else stays the same. From what I guess the gentleman who's actually gonna run the restaurant or own the restaurant. So the only outstanding item would be then the streetscape in the front. And if there is any landscaping that died, then obviously it needs to be replaced. And,
right.
And if there's any other, issues with anything else on the actual property outside, it needs to be corrected, obviously.
Yeah, we're not aware of any. We think everything's okay, but of course, once the borough does its CO inspection, if there's anything that needs to be corrected, it will be.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Costa. Let me continue with questions from the board. Ms. Boland, can I start with you?
Yeah, so I'm still going to go back to the signage. I think what's being shown will give an appearance of being much larger than what was there, because of the fact that it was just letters there and no backing, and now we have a full backing. So I think 40 square feet is excessive for the sign. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Let me go now to Mr. Canigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Ms. Boland about the sign, especially given the fact that it's a just square 40-foot sign as opposed to the individual letters. I also agree that the streetscape component that was not adhered to or followed through with back in 2018 must be followed through with now if we're going to approve this. The Kinderkamak corridor businesses of River Edge don't have in certain instances the greatest streetscapes. So I think it's important for our town to beautify it whenever it's possible. The board in 2018 saw fit to require that as a condition. And I don't think we should step back from it because it's going to give future applicants just the impetus to ignore what we asked for once they get the approval and go ahead with whatever they want to do. So I think it's important that we adhere to what was requested beforehand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
I very much agree with what Ms. Boland and Mr. Canigo said wholeheartedly. I'd also like to just opine for a second on the sign. The sign is not a full 40 square feet. It's clear that that's not the case. So I would think that the applicant should propose a sign closer to the 20 square feet or at least less than the 40 square foot. And those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Councilman.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cray.
Same, all my questions that we're going to ask have been asked and answered. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbons?
Nothing really to add, just to reiterate, on the sign, I would agree that, the monsoon sign, I think, is less obtrusive than what's being proposed. And also a little disappointed that the streetscape was not addressed, seeing it's been 6 years. And it does look like it's the same ownership that's owned the property for about 13 years. So I think it's time we clean up the front. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merman.
Several comments. Ms. Barrett, can you give or your client give testimony that the lower level is currently being used for storage and will remain storage only?
Mr. Derulo, is the basement or the lower level currently being used for storage?
Yes, for now I am not using. because upstairs very big. I have enough upstairs for the rest.
And it will remain as storage?
Yeah, like storage, we put everything.
Okay, fine. Your dumpster enclosure is in need of repair. The gate is falling off, so I'm going to request that you repair that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, no.
Great. I'd like to solve the sign tonight so that we can at least give criteria to the applicant and the borough authorities so to avoid having to come back into the board for any kind of sign approval. If we can set up some criteria on square footage and size, that would be fine. Can we do that somehow, Mr. Chairman?
I have no objections to that, unless anybody else on the board does.
I've heard a maximum of 40 square feet. I've heard 20 square feet by one other board member. Might have been the mayor, I'm not sure. Can we hold this is to the board now. Maybe we can hold the board somehow. Can we hold the total signage square footage to 40 square feet? Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, can you poll the board? I'd like to walk out of here with a clean slate.
Okay. Let's start with, go around the room here. Ms. Boland, let's start with you.
I don't know if I understand. So Dick, you're saying you want to give 40 square feet?
I want to give a square footage maximum. I want to set criteria for the sign so the applicant nor the board have to address this again.
Well, without having something in
Can I
front of us.
interrupt? Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. My suggestion would just be that they comply with our ordinance. Right?
All right, the ordinance says 20 square feet. Is that what it says, Mr. Deputy?
Ms. Steinley, what do we have what is our sign ordinance? What's the maximum they can have size?
I believe it's 20 square feet. I think Tom.
I believe so also. I'm not certain, but it's the applicant's, it's their application and they should be presenting what they are proposing.
Yep, Tom Barrett,
Yes.
are you willing to reduce the sign to either meet the ordinance or do you have a reduction? Because many members of the board have expressed their concerns with the
Right.
sign.
Mr. Karulak, do you have any alternatives to suggest regarding the sign?
Okay, I can make it 30 square feet.
Well, if I just have to interject, it's pretty simple. If they don't comply, they need a variance, or they can rely
Yeah,
on.
it's no problem, just
Or
we
they can
cut
rely.
it.
Okay,
They will
or you
fix
can
it.
rely on the monsoon approval. Those are the only options without getting a variance. So
Mr. Barrett
some-
did notice for a sign change.
okay, so the board has the ability to grant the variance if it wants to grant the variance, but so I guess you could either grant the variance or not. That's where we are.
So I think Mr. Kurlev has asked the board if they would consider a 30 square foot sign. And I think that, we do need to take into account the location. It's not a freestanding building so that there's only the one sign on the front and it has to be a sufficient size that people aren't going to, be distracted trying to find it, find the location. So I think that, it may take into account some of your comments. It's certainly smaller than what has been proposed. And we would ask, the board to consider that, the 3 by 10 or whatever dimensions. The building itself is 50 feet wide So, if we went down to, 3 by 10, we still have, I'm sorry, 60 feet wide. The building's 60 feet wide. So we don't, we'd still have 25 feet on either side of the sign if it's centered. If it's, if it's 10 feet wide.
All right, so our ordinance provides for a maximum of 20 feet without relief. Your client's now proposing 30 feet. Mr.
I
Kanigo?
think our ordinance may be 16 feet. If I'm reading it correctly, it's 416-53 is the ordinance number, and it says maximum area of signs, and it's talking about retail and commercial uses for such business or commercial business having a principal frontage of over 12 feet shall be governed by the material of which the sign is composed as follows. Number one, no larger than 16 square feet. All signs painted, silk screen, decal, etc. on boards, metal, wood, or plastic. The area will include all lettering, wording, and accompanying design and symbols together with background, whether open or enclosed, on which they're displayed. So the way I'm reading it, it's 16 square feet.
And my understanding is Mr. Barrett's requesting a variance for 30 square feet.
Correct.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Now,
So, Ms. Boland, you've heard the latest proposal. The applicants come down to 30 square feet. Is that something that is you might find acceptable?
I would lean towards having it conforming.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kanigo, I think we.
I mean, I would like to see, can we get a mock-up of what the sign would look like on the building? I think that would help everybody to understand what it is we're looking at. We're trying not to make these signs overly ostentatious, not too large. We don't want billboards on the top of buildings. It's very difficult to really understand what the 40 by 10 would look like on this building when I think a very simple mock-up, it shouldn't take, more than a couple of minutes to put together and show us. But otherwise, I would say, every time we change these things, we set what I think are dangerous precedents. So, without a reason to really consider as to why it needs to be different from other businesses in the area, I think we stick with what Ms. Boland said.
Okay. Mr. Gibbons.
I would agree. I'm just looking at the Google Maps here and going up and down Kinderkamak and looking at Sanducci's and looking at Killam and Maddo, and I don't think they're anywhere near 40 feet. So I would rather see it be consistent with what we have on Kinderkamak already and comply.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
I agree.
Okay. Councilman?
I'm in agreement with what others have said
Okay.
about
Mr. Cray?
complying with the variance. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cray?
I agree that 40 square feet seems a little excessive, but I do think there is some consideration that could be given here, because if you look at the frontage of this building versus the ones that are adjacent to it, with, I don't know if those were conforming or non-conforming signs or there were variances, but their signage basically takes up the whole front of their building, where the sign that's existing right now, or was existing for Monsoon, it covers, not even 25% of the frontage. So I think, how the building presents and the visibility of the sign does get impacted by that. So I would be open to a little bit of a variance on the signage. I wouldn't go 40 feet, but I think, allowing it to be a little bigger would not be out of line.
Okay. I'm gonna go back, Mr. Depkin. There's nothing, or as far as you're aware, there's nothing in the records that indicates the square footage of the Monsoon sign when it was installed.
That I don't know. I wasn't here at the time.
Okay. Tom, you don't know of anything of.
I've been trying to look during the discussion and I haven't found that resolution or plans. I mean, I can maybe. I don't have it now at my fingertips. No, but
Okay.
I would say if we can find it, the applicant would be entitled to that amount. Mr. Kanigo pointed out there's a distinction between what the ordinance allows. If it's a board sign as is proposed versus individual letters, there's leeway, let's say. But without confirmation, we are where we are.
Well, I think at this point, we've got a proposal for a board sign.
Right,
So
that's the,
yeah, and I don't know that we, and even if I guess we could find the monsoon dimensions, I don't know if that necessarily would match apples to apples in this context.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Merman.
regarding the sign, I'm going on a motion propose that the applicant submit a separate application, sign application to the board for a sign permit. And so this, if and when I make this proposal for this application, it will not include a permanent sign. It'll have to come back to the board, which I was trying to avoid. So that's what's going to happen right now.
Okay. Any further questions on the application, Mr. Merman, from you?
I got the fence enclosure. Oh, the restriping of the parking. Mr. Costa had a comment in his original report that the parking striping shall conform to standard spacing. But likewise, his handicap striping needs to be detailed properly from what he's shown. One other thing I had, Mr. Barrett, I will point out to you that the 12 parking spaces right now reserved for this application, this site, have standing vehicles in them. So your applicant is going to have to clear those before he stripes that whole backside there. That's, you see what I'm saying, Mr. Barrett?
You mean there's cars that are parked there?
Yes, or in the 12 count that we had. I believe it was 12 or 14.
There's 11 actually that are noted.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, you mean they're parked there permanently, or?
Yes, right now they are. When I was out there yesterday, you had a minimum of 3 white vehicles of various styles. So they're going to have to be moved before you restripe those for your applicant.
Okay, well, I mean, so we're just going to restripe the spaces that as they exist. We're just going to, paint over the existing striping so that that it's more visible. We're not going to change the dimensions or anything.
No, the ones by the building, the ones marked 4 through 8, I think have to be adjusted accordingly. But I'll leave that to Mr. Costa. My point on the vehicles is on the allocated parking spaces to this applicant has vehicles currently parked in it. They're going to have to be removed.
Okay, well, it's actually those spaces are actually shared. They're not allocated solely for the use of this applicant. Mr. Gorski, or MCG Realty, the owner of the property, has agreed that they can share those spaces. They're not solely for the use of, the restaurant.
Well, how's the restaurant going to share them if they're permanently?
Well, no, right. We have to look into that. I wasn't aware of the situation, so.
I didn't hear anybody. What was the point?
I'm just saying I don't know anything about it, so I have to look into it. I'm not sure what the situation is. So I'll certainly have a conversation with Mr. Gorski later in the week if he knows whose cars they are or what have you. Mr. Carrillo, do you know what cars Mr. Merman might be referring to?
On the back side?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, I think, 2 cars all the time on the back side.
Okay.
But we have still 9 spots. When you go
Right.
backside, we have 9 parking always available.
Right. Do you know who they are though? Who those folks are?
No, I don't know exactly who is.
And do they come and go, or they just park there?
But mostly I see their car, but now I don't know exactly how
Okay.
much, because when I come here, always I see the car in the
Okay.
backside.
All right, so we'll look into it, Mr. Merman.
Okay, yeah, it's to your applicant's benefit.
I understand.
And all, okay. That's about the only comments I have, and, Mr. Chairman, whenever did we go
If
out
I-
to the public yet?
Not yet.
Well, could I just
Not yet.
make one,
Okay,
may I make one comment before you go to the public, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I
And
actually
that
have one.
is-
I actually have one question for you, Mr. Barrett, actually for your
Yes.
client. And I apologize if this was already covered. Do we have a count as to how many employees are going to be working in the restaurant?
No, I didn't ask that question. Mr. Kurolev? How many
Yes, sir.
employees?
So we start with 4, and for future, maybe 6.
Okay. And how would those employees be arriving and departing? Are they using?
Because we are a family-run restaurant, we come with one car every day. And because I am chef also, I cook myself. And my wife and my brother, we are family. We come with the car and we go with the one car.
And perhaps one other question for the board's sake. You were describing the operation of your other restaurant to me yesterday.
Yeah.
In terms of how your patrons arrive at that restaurant. Would you describe that to the board?
About the sign, you mean?
No, about your patrons, the customers who come to your restaurant. Do they drive to your restaurant, most of them, or how do they come?
Yeah, because 40% my customer, they are coming with the Uber because they have, they come to drink to restaurant all the time. So that's why mostly customer come by taxi, by Uber. The other restaurant, I have only 6 spots in Marlborough Township, very busy area. But most customer, they come by taxi, by Uber. That's why I never had a problem with the parking.
So your experience, based on the other restaurant, is that at least 40% of the patrons arrive via Uber or taxi?
Yes, sir, because they come and drink alcohol,
Right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I think you want to go ahead with what statement you
Yeah.
had?
Well, and I just had one other comment. I understand the board's going to reiterate the necessity of complying with the streetscape, but we would like the opportunity for Mr. Kairulev to, begin operations. So if there could be a time limit on when that has to be accomplished without prohibiting him from opening up. He's been paying rent and hasn't been able to use the space because no one was aware that they, needed to obtain this approval.
I think we can consider that as part of the conditions.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from the board before we go out to the public? Okay. At this time, I'll look for a motion to open to the public.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a first, Ms. Boland, second, Mr. Kanigo, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposing, abstain. Okay, at this time, we are now open to the public for comment on this application alone. Is there anyone in attendance on Zoom
Yes,
who
we
wishes to be
do.
heard? Okay.
Louis Lamatina, if you please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I don't see video, but Louis J. Lamatina, I'm an attorney at law, South 105 Farview Avenue, Paramus, New Jersey, representing MCG Realty LLC. I'm here with Gary Borski, the principal.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
So I don't see any opportunity for video. That's fine. So Mr. Gorski is here. We've
I can
listened.
move.
Oh, okay.
I'll
You put a
have
suit
to
and tie
remove
on.
you real quick. Yeah. All right, you should be able to use the video now.
Okay, up, yep, hang on. But it seems my camera is closed. It worked this morning. Report. So I don't know what the problem is. If you don't mind, I guess you won't get to see my suit and tie and everything. That's the board. So as I said, I'm here with Gary Gorski, AKA Mr. Hatfield of the Hatfield McCoy feud. And I'm new to the game here. Mr. Gorski is a longtime friend and colleague. So we've heard the testimony. And he can testify. He's next to me. Not that you can tell, Gary, if you want to just identify yourself.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
So as Mr. Barrett said, the agreement does exist, and it will be honored. What did I just do?
We can still hear you.
Okay, now everybody's white. So, so the agreement does exist. The concern, though, is as I read Mr. Costa's report, the variance required is almost 100% variance. You need 37 spaces. Applicant has 7 spaces. The rest are shared. And we just heard testimony that 2 of those spaces are taken. They are taken by one of Mr. Gorski's tenants. The tenant does move the trucks, but there's a need for those spaces. Sanducci's is a very busy restaurant, and we're very concerned about awarding such a large variance of 18 spaces. I would also point out that there's been no testimony whatsoever on the criteria, the C1 or C2 criteria. So I don't think this board has the ability to grant that variance. Finally, I would note that while there's other existing conditions noted, nonconformities, this is not noted as an existing nonconformity. It's simply noted as a variance. So I think this board needs to look at it anew and say, are we going to approve a restaurant with 91 seats with only 7 dedicated spaces?
Mr. Chairman, the board's resolution in 2018 addressed the issue.
The parking variance was previously approved, correct?
Correct.
Mr.
I didn't see that in the report. It listed as a variance, so I guess you would say it's an existing nonconformity that's been approved, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Gorski, I don't know if he was aware of that, but I haven't seen the resolution, so I will take Mr. Barrett on his word that it's been approved before. I do ask that the resolution of adoption, if that's where the board is going, indicate that the applicant needs to maintain only using those 12 spots and not encroach on Mr. Gorski's other spots, which are needed for a very busy Sanducci restaurant and a school that he operates in his building. And just to conclude, Mr. Gorski spent considerable money on the streetscape and would urge this board to require the applicant or the landlord to conform with I understand the borough's streetscape ordinance. The intent of which is to make the streetscape somewhat uniform. So I'd ask that also be considered by the board. That's all I have. Unless you have anything. Well,
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Donnelly, do we have anybody else?
There are other members, but
No one.
in attendance,
Anyone else in attendance this evening wish to be heard on this application? Please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone keypad.
I don't see anyone.
I don't see anyone. All right. At this time, we'll look for a motion to close the public, please.
So moved.
I think Ms. Boland and Mr. Gibbons, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed and abstaining? All right, this time we're now closed to the public for comment on this application. Uh,
I wouldn't.
further questions, comments from the board?
You know, it's
Before
Just
we,
a comment, I think Mr. Lamatina is still as a panelist and his mic is not on. His mic is on.
Yeah, I can't do anything on my screen, so if you can just mute us, please.
I'm not, I'm trying to, but I don't know
Top of my
how.
screen says Zoom webinar not responding. Should I try to leave and come back?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
thank you.
I don't know if I can. I'm just gonna close the program.
There we go.
Okay,
I think that might have worked.
that seems, yeah, okay.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Debkin.
Mr. Merman?
Yeah, Mr. Debkin,
Yes, sir.
there was some discussion about temporary operation without a sign and without installing some of the amenities that we discussed, especially streetscape. How can we go about that? Just mention it in the motion, or is there a time limit, or what's the procedure?
I would suggest putting as much information as you can into the resolution. A timeline is certainly something that I would suggest you do. They were giving, we issued them a temporary grand opening banner type of thing for 28 days.
Okay.
If you want that extended further until the board approves the sign, we can do so.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Can we make that? Is it possible to make it renewable for one or two cycles?
I can do so.
Okay. All right. Just in case the sign doesn't become installed, because he's still going to have to come back to the board now, and that's going to take a bit of time.
Okay.
Okay,
I would put a timeline on the streetscape though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what sort of timeline would you suggest? I guess it's probably a question for you and Mr. Costa. As far as timeline for the streetscape improvements.
That's not up to me. That's up to the applicant getting his contractors available and doing so. Maybe Mr. Barrett might suggest a time.
How's 6 months? No, seriously, I mean,
6 months is reasonable.
They need to find somebody. They need to get plans drawn. I think that perhaps it could be done a little quicker, but I don't know how much quicker.
Tom, you're gonna need approvals from the county, road opening permits. You're gonna, depending on the pavers, if they're even in stock. I think 6 months is definitely reasonable.
That's true, as long as they don't forget.
Right.
Is
If you
is
don't
there
do it in
is-
6 months, then I think the applicant has a choice. Come back to this board. Otherwise, either myself or Mr. Debkin, then we issue violations, and then you deal with that side of the borough. I mean, I think that's reasonable at this point.
Okay.
And
Now,
if- I don't know if-
does this hold the owner's feet to the fire, because this person has owned this building for 13 years and they didn't do it last time? I don't
Here's
want to
the-
hold this
if the-
applicant.
If the app, well, right now, it would be a condition, correct? It would be a condition of any resolution or approval tonight. If they don't do it, the owner probably gave consent to this gentleman to make an application before you. So the applicant technically is on the hook.
And there's
You
no
can't-
way to put the owner on the hook because he didn't do it 6 years ago. So
Again, I'm not an attorney. I know there's one in the middle column, right in the center, but I think the applicant, it would bear on the applicant. And then it's up to those two gentlemen to fight it out. But the
Well,
bottom line
well-
is, if he doesn't do it in 6 months, somebody's getting a violation, and ultimately, if he loses, he's gonna get a CO pulled from him, I would imagine.
Well,
Isn't the owner non-conforming now based on the last application though, from 2018? Like, don't we have power now separate and apart from this application to address the fact that this was not done when it should have been?
Honestly, I don't have the resolution. I don't know who the applicant was. If If it was the restaurant, you would have to go after the restaurant closed up and moved out.
Right, the restaurant was the applicant according to the copy of the
And-
resolution that I have.
That's
If
my
I-
recollection.
If I need to issue a violation and a penalty, it would go to the applicant and the property owner.
And the owner.
I just don't want to see the applicant here getting penalized for something that this guy didn't do 6 years ago.
Right.
And I don't know that's gonna get, these things should be, in my eyes, these things should be taken care of by the owner, not necessarily the person trying to run a restaurant. So I don't want to see this applicant get penalized for this, but it needs to get done. It obviously didn't get done before with the same owner.
The only, sad to say, the only way you could do it would be a developer's agreement and a bond. And if they default, then you go after the bonding company. But again, based on something like this, I don't know. I think they need to discuss what they're doing and then figure it out. Otherwise, any resolution, in my opinion, goes back to the applicant. So I think the applicant should think long and hard if he's responsible for this. That's up to those guys contractually.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
the
sir.
original resolution for Monsoon in 2018 was issued to RSM Trading. Just so you know.
So that was the restaurant, in all
Yes.
likelihood. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
just for additional context, that was the restaurant. Hannah Realty is the landlord. Myself, apologies on not getting that done. I was not part of managing that at that time. My uncle Neil Aiden on all of these documents since then has passed away. Not an excuse, but just facts. Has been in River Edge for a very long time. Also owns 111 Kinder Kamak. I'll make sure that there's all necessary actions taken to complete the streetscape. I think 6 months is reasonable. I can work out contractually with the tenant. That's really the least of my concerns. Just want to get it right. But just sharing that detail as some context of what's happened then and what would happen now.
Mr. Barrett, do you want to proceed this evening before you have your agreement, your client worked out with the landlord on this, or?
I don't know, Mr. Gavrila, do you want to have a telephone conversation with me? And the board will give us 5 minutes to do so?
Sure.
Yes, please.
All right, I'll call you.
All right, so it's let's call it 9:29. We'll adjourn until 9:40 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, it's Tom Barrett. So what they're saying is, are you comfortable? Yeah, that's what it said. No, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to get you to be able to open. And so the board will approve it tonight, but what the board is saying is that since you're the applicant, if the owner doesn't do it, then you're the one who'd be responsible for doing it. That's why I'm asking you if you'd be comfortable with, okay. 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 So you're comfortable then proceeding, getting an approval, and then dealing with the issue with Mr. A. Okay. And do you have any thoughts on the sign? Because six. Well, again, we would have to see, the problem is that it's almost impossible to find any records the borough may have as to what may have been approved there. You're entitled to whatever approval she received, but we don't know what that was. That wasn't addressed in 2018. No, the resolution only addressed the patio. It didn't address her sign. That would have been addressed earlier when she initially moved in.
Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
your mic is live.
Oh, thank you. Let me figure out how to mute it.
You're muted.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, I'm back. I don't think, you don't. Kill that. I don't know what happened, but I'm just, I think we're gonna sign off for the evening.
We're in a 10-minute recess.
Yep.
Okay, do we have everybody back? Looks like got the board, got Lisa, Tom, Steve, Rob's here. Okay. Mr. Barrett, I think we're just missing your client.
He should be with us momentarily, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, and there he is. All right, let's go back on the record, please. Now 9:41 p.m. This is the meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge. Ms. Steinle, you wanted to call the roll? Just
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Here.
Mr. Caslin,
here.
Ms. Boland,
Here.
Mr. Merman,
Here.
Mr. Cray,
Here.
Mr. Kanigo,
Here.
Councilman Glass,
Here.
Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
All right, we are all back.
We're all back. We have Mr. Depkin, we have Mr. Behrens, and Mr. Costa as well. Mr. Barrett, we'll turn to you, sir.
Yes, we would like to proceed. My client is confident that he and Mr. Aiden will be able to resolve any contractual issues. We heard Mr. Aiden already speak to the issue of the streetscape and, wants to get it right this time. So we would like to proceed. My client is anxious to open.
Okay. Before we move to a motion, any questions, comments left from the board? Is anyone in objection for not taking action on the application this evening? Okay. In that case, I will look to the board for a motion on the application, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Merman.
let me take a try at it. I'm afraid that this is going to wind up being a combined motion by input from several of the members.
Okay.
So regarding, and Mr. Barrett, I'm going to apologize ahead of time to mispronouncing your client's name. Regarding the Umajon Kirolov application at 606 Kindikamak Road, block 617, lot 14, for a food handler's license. I make the following motion that the board grant approval upon the following conditions. That the rear dumpster enclosure fence be repaired, that parking on the parking stall, all the parking stall striping and all be in accordance with the proper standards, and the 12 or 11, I believe it's 12, 11 or 12 stripes along the rear fence line be restriped also. Regarding the streetscape, that streetscape previously approved and not installed, now be installed, consisting of a new sidewalk as required, plus pavers between the curb and one, being current standard, borough standard, and that the existing trees or air replacement be installed, that the streetscape, be granted a 6-month time period from the approval of this, application for installation. And regarding signage, that the temporary sign installed that has a 28-day renewable permit be renewable to the extent the building department deems necessary prior to installation of a permanent sign. That the permanent sign is be submitted separately to this board for review and approval, and that the applicant be permitted to open for business until open for business period. I think that's it, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure I left out something, and something can be polished at the same time.
Mr. Merman, I believe you mentioned also there was that needed to be repaired for the waste container.
There is a dumpster enclosure there already, and it requires repair, Mr. Glass.
You had mentioned that first, Mr. Merriman.
Yep, I think that,
That was Mr. Glass's question.
Yes.
okay. All right, on the
So-
motion, Ms. Steinle?
Oh, I'm sorry, we just need a second. Sorry.
Yeah, I was, okay. May I have a second on Mr. Merman's motion?
Second,
All right, Mr. Cray, thank you. Ms. Steinle, when you're ready.
My only comment was about the signage, is that the motion reflect that the signage needs a permit and that the applicant will either comply with the prior approval or with the borough ordinance. And Mr. Barrett, that's acceptable?
Yes,
That's the permanent sign.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so that'll be the motion, and I'll take the vote. Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
Mr. Caslin,
Yes,
Ms. Boland,
Yes,
Mr. Merman,
Yes,
Mr. Cray,
yes,
Mr. Kanigo,
Yes,
Councilman Glass,
Yes.
Mr. Givens.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you, everyone.
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We will move forward. Thank you.
good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Have a
luck.
good day. Bye. Thank you very much.
All right,
Okay, good luck.
that is the last item on our agenda this evening, unless anyone has anything else in welfare. I will look for a motion to adjourn. Close.
So moved.
Mr. Givens is the first. Have a second?
second.
Second,
And Mr. Kanigo is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Stand
you,
adjourned at
everyone.
9:48 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Good job.